Are you guys ready for my eye reveal? Here it goes. Just kidding. I don't have eyes. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. It's going to be another video today. This time I'm going to talk about my maintenance log for this car. In a previous video I've mentioned that this car was all hunky-dory and that there were no major problems and that I expect this car to live to about 225 to 250,000 miles. Now, I said there were no major problems with this car. By major problems, I mean that I never had to redo the transmission or the engine or the differential or anything fun like that. However, this car was full of nickel and dime type of repairs, most of which are regular maintenance, I believe. And this one's just fucking garbage. So, what I do, I believe this is a good habit, but what I do is I like to log all of the maintenance that I do. And this is very important for two reasons, because I like to do most of my repairs myself. By logging all of my maintenance, I will be able to tell when was the last time I changed something, when is something due, what I did to this car, and also if I were to ever sell this car to somebody, they know what I did to this car. Of course, I'm going to drive this car until the wheels fall off, but I have this maintenance log, and today I want to share that with you guys. So we're about to enter my favorite little parking lot, and we're going to do some reading of this little piece of paper that I have. I bought this car and titled it to myself in July 2015, and it had 121,100 miles on the odometer. Currently, it is December 2016, and I have 152,000 miles on the odometer. I know you guys like to see me drive around. I'm sorry about that. Also, my hair is messed up today, so please try not to fixate on that. So anyways, let's pull out the maintenance log. There it is. So let's begin. Car received July 1st, 2015, 121,100 miles on the odometer. I installed a dash cam. I don't know the date on that. I installed the LEDs. I installed VIN etchings. We are up to my first oil change, October 11, 2015. 126,083 miles on the odometer. My first oil change wasn't a happy one. Okay, so I bought a filter, I bought some oil, and I tried to do the oil change myself, and I found that the drain plug was stuck, like really stuck. Either the previous owner took this car to an oil change shop that does oil changes, and either they tightened the drain plug like crazy hell, or they've never even bothered taking the drain plug out. And I remember I tried to get this drain plug off using everything that I had, and all I ended up doing was stripping the head of the bolt. So I ended up taking it to a Firestone, and I already had my own oil, I already had my own filter, and I told these guys, listen, I need a new drain plug. And then they were like, well, there's a problem, because we can do the drain plug, but that would mean that the car has no oil in it, and we don't take oil and filters from a third party. We can't install parts from a third party. That's a policy that Firestone has. And I was like, well, shit. Okay, because that makes no sense, because I want you guys to pull out the old drain plug and put a new drain plug in. Okay, I don't know. You guys can throw it into neutral and roll it off, and then I'll do the whole oil change myself, I guess, in the parking lot. But that makes no sense. I mean, I have the stuff. I'm willing to pay you guys. You might as well as do it. I'm no trouble. So they got the manager over, and the manager was very chill, and he did just that. So my first oil change was at a shop. They brought me the old drain plug, and I saw that it was all rusted and crusted and stuff, so that was a mess. That's why it's good to do your own oil changes. Then the next thing I did was I went for a driver's airbag recall. That happened at November 18th, 2015, with 128,000 miles on the odometer. See, just out of interest, I decided to look up the VIN with the this government website that allows you to see what kind of recalls the vehicle has, and I found out that the driver's airbag was recalled. Oh my god. It also happened to be deer season in Pennsylvania, and 3 of my friends lost their cars to deer. And I was like, well, shit. So you're telling me that, you know, I might hit a deer, and I might survive that, but if the airbag goes off, then it's gonna explode into like shrapnel and shit and kill me, and that'd be the stupidest way to die. So what I did was I undid these 2 bolts here, unplugged the airbag, and I drove without an airbag for like half a month until I went to the dealership and they replaced the airbag. It was a recall that was never addressed. Then I installed the cold air intake. Okay? See, the thing with the cold air intake is cars have computers, and these computers, unless tuned, will try to do everything they can to maintain the horsepower that is meant for this car from the factory, fuel consumption, so on and so forth. So by installing the cold air intake, I don't think I added any power. So it's not like a mod that makes me look cool because power and all that stuff, no. But what I did notice is that it gave me an extra mile per gallon or 2 as far as fuel economy goes. Probably because maybe colder air or a larger amount of air. So the cold air intake paid for itself in fuel economy, and power, it didn't do much for that. Okay, then came my second oil change, December 11th, 2015. I had 130,000 miles on the odometer. Then came a coolant top-up. I noticed that I was sort of low on coolant, so I topped it up. Then I changed my PCV valve at 130,000 miles. Then I ended up changing my transmission fluid and filter at 131,655 miles. See, I bought this car used, and I don't know if the previous owner ever changed the transmission fluid. Okay, and the transmission is a very vital component of the car. This car doesn't have a transmission fluid dipstick. Instead, there's a little plug. You pull this out, and a dealer or a mechanic, or, you know, if you buy the part off of eBay, there's like a little dipstick that you slide into there. It's like a Chrysler generic dipstick, but it doesn't come with the car. Anyways, I take it to the mechanics at Daly's Golf, and these guys are fantastic. I'm under the impression that they pour their heart out into these into their cars. So I took it to Daly's Golf, and they were like, what do you need? And I said, I need a transmission fluid change. So there are 2 types of things that you can do for your transmission as far as fluid goes. You can do a drain and fill, or you can do a flush. Flushes usually don't come recommended because you pump out old fluid, you might dislodge a couple particles and shit, and they might find themselves elsewhere, and you might end up with a problem that was worse than before. I went to Daly's and I was like, listen, can you guys please drop the pan, wipe down the magnet on the bottom of the pan, put in a new gasket, change the filter, and top it up with new fluid? And they said, yeah, sure. And I said, while you're doing that, could you please save me a sample of the fluid? Because I don't have access to the fluid, but I do want to see what my car is doing. So I was, you know, in my mind, I thought they would just get like a little paper cup, fill it up with a sample of the fluid, and give it to me. These guys, what they did was, you know, they did the whole job. They did the whole job great. But when I came back, they had a whole big-ass box full of shit. And they were like, this is the old gasket. This is the rag we used to wipe down the magnet. Here is like 5 cups of the transmission fluid. Okay. All I did was I dipped my finger in the cup, looked at it. Was it slick? Was it pink? Were there any particles? So on and so forth. And I was like, okay, thanks. And this guy with this whole box was like, damn it. So I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you guys would do that. But, you know, if somebody from Daly's Golf is watching this, you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. Then I came back the next day or whatever to check the fluid again because occasional air pockets or contractions and shit. And everything was fine. I replaced the radio head unit. The old one was busted. It stopped playing CDs. And I need to play my CDs all the time. I can't live without my CDs. So I went on carpart.com, and this is fantastic. car-part.com. And this basically gives you all of the parts that are registered with them on their database, their locations in junkyards and so on and so forth. So I ordered a new radio from Virginia for like $50 from like a junkyard, and they shipped it, and I installed it. It works fantastically. Everything is tip top. At 134,000 miles in March, I changed the front brake pads and rotors. Okay, I started noticing that around 80 miles per hour, when I hit the brakes, the car would shake like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. All sorts of funny ass vibrations. So I took a look, and sure enough, my brake pads needed changing and my rotors needed changing. See, the outside of the rotors, they weren't so bad, but the inside, they were all tapered in. So that was pretty ugly. I had to change that. A caliper guide pin was seized up, so I took a hammer and a screwdriver, got it off, polished it up real nice, put in some grease. So I did a brake job on the front end of the car. March 12th, 134,790 miles. Oil change. Then I also changed the brake pads for the rear. Not the rotors, just the brake pads. The rotors need attention in the next year or so, I would say. So I left the brake rotors for another time when I could afford them. But for now I changed the brake pads because those were getting low. And that was at 135,300 miles. Then I decided to check out the differential fluid. So I took it to Daly's again. And I was like, listen fellas, if you could drain and fill the differential fluid for me, that'd be great. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem, we can do that for you. That was at 135,600 miles, and I asked them to save me a sample. But please don't save a huge box of all these samples and stuff. I don't want you guys to go crazy, I said. Just please, a little paper cup of this stuff will be just fine. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I come back, and then they bring me the paper cup of differential fluid, and I look at this, and they were like, whoa, wait. Whatever you do, don't dip your fingers in there. This shit smells like a motherfucker. You'll never get the smell out for a long ass time. But here's a sample of the fluid. You will notice that it's quite alright. It's not too bad. It did need, changing, but I swirled it around in the cup and it was alright. Differential fluid does smell a lot. Then I had an oil change at 140,213 miles. Oh, and this one's fun. I changed my shift interlock latch at 141,052 miles. What happened was I went on vacation for like 2 weeks. I came back and I couldn't shift my car out of park. It turns out a plastic little component in the shifter broke. I made a short video about this, but this little plastic component broke. Why would Chrysler make something so critical out of plastic? I don't know. But I replaced it with a metal one. The repair cost me maybe like 20 bucks or so. It was no big deal. It was actually kind of funny, and now I know for a fact that this will never break for the rest of life because it's metal. Shift interlock latch replaced at 141,000 miles because the plastic little hook that the spring hooked onto broke. Another oil change at 145,677 miles. I replaced tie rod ends at 146,000 miles, and I also got an alignment with that. Basically, the old tie rods were, they've reached the end of their life. And I remember I took off the front left tie rod and it disintegrated in my own hands.
And it's in horrible shape. I just barely touch it, it moves over and it makes a lot of noise and there's a lot of dirt under the boot and, well, that just fell apart.
So that was fun, but I got a spanking brand new tie rods in here and a wheel alignment. And then I had an oil change at 150,000 miles. And that's it. My next oil change is due at 155,000 miles. See, but the thing is, it's good to keep a log like this because most of this stuff I did myself. So if I were to sell the car, nobody would see what I did to this thing on the Carfax. Nobody would know what I did to this thing. I wouldn't be able to tell what this car had new exactly and when it was new and so on and so forth. And it's also good for me because I could go back and look at when I last changed something and when it needs attention. Oh, that was so satisfactory. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you didn't like it, please leave a comment telling me why so I can improve whatever, because I'm kind of new to this whole thing. And yeah, if you're from Australia, please leave a dislike. It's upside down, so over here that's a like. Murder that fucking subscribe button. I wish to have 150 subscribers before Christmas.